The time is exactly 4:51 p.m. and this is your very own host, Razia Khan. May I kindly request our very next speaker to join us over on stage and address you all. Architect is a partner at Creators Architects, founder at Black Swan Lab, and an innovation strategist. As a long believer in transformation by design, he has developed science of innovation as his means to achieve this. Founded the framework called Diagnostic Innovation, he wrote the book Rebound, which talks about how innovation can be applied to business and not just bounce back, but disrupt their markets. He mentors entrepreneurs for innovation in their business and runs a mastermind group. Applied in architecture, he believes in outcome-driven model as a method that focuses on architecture, delivering what matters most to the client's vision. This leads to greater client success, greater ROIs, and ultimately a disruptive legacy in their own niche. Ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause, may I please welcome Utssav Gupta, architect Utssav Gupta, sir, over on stage. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, good evening, everybody. So, it's a pleasure to share this subject with you, which is quite frankly very close to my heart, innovation. In the slide, we have written design by innovation and innovation by design. So, what is the real difference between these two? Now, design and innovation are not something that is exclusive from this community out here. We already are thriving because of these two words, design and innovation. So what I'm trying to show over here is a different perspective towards design and how we can attempt it, especially looking at the interior design model. What I want to start with is the beginning of setting up a case for innovation. So we know that how in unprecedented times we are living in, where innovation has become a key factor for almost major industry growth. If you look at the publishing industry in the graph, and if you map along with the time with the number of publications published, almost every single spike which is mentioned in the red arrow can be attributed to one of the innovations that is happening because of either maybe invention of the ink or the Heidelberg machine or the .com age that has created the spike which has gone to the next level. We can see a similar thing on the airline industry, where again all the spikes have been attributed to one of the ecosystem measures or the technology or the foundation of a new plane, which has given rise to the passenger per kilometer. Of course, this doesn't take care of the recent COVID situation, but what I'm trying to lay over here is that innovation is coming up as a major game changer in any industry, including energy, logistics, and consumer electronics. So it doesn't come as a surprise when we say that innovation or die, cost of doing nothing. And we have seen companies all across. We have the Kodak as a perfect example, which is was once a pioneer in analog cameras, is now almost obsolete. We have the BlackBerry. I'm sure a lot of people will remember how beautiful the BlackBerry were, and now they're almost obsolete. So though these companies were innovative in their own right when they grew, what happened? Why couldn't they cope up? And where are they now, and what can we do to avoid that catastrophe in our firms and with our clients? And that is the whole motto of this presentation. So though this presentation is a little architecture oriented, I would like you all to take the essence of how innovation can affect the interior design world and what can we do about it to support more of our clients. Another survey statistics by McKinsey shows that 84% of the global executives say that innovation is extremely important. Not just one of the 10 things, they say that it's extremely important. Here's the rub. Only 6% are satisfied by the innovation performance. Surprised? How many of you are surprised? Yeah, I was. I could understand that how can the innovation rate should be so low. And that's what actually took me to the journey of understanding this rabbit hole of why this actually happens. And what I'm going to share today is some of the revelations I found in the innovation industry and how does it relate to the building industry as such at large. So the common beliefs around innovation, and this is not exclusive to just architecture or interior design, it's in general, is when we say what people think about innovation. Innovation is hard, it's very hard. Successful innovations is by chance, by coincidence, or by luck. So you attempt many tries, and hopefully one of them will work. So it's actually by chance. That's what people believe. Successful innovations are expensive. Yeah? Because by the means of hit and trial, we have already failed 9 times, and one is a success. But the revenue takes for successful innovations for all the 10 attempts that we have made. So can I piggyback on the other innovations instead of spending the entire time and money myself? Or other part is my innovations are not wanted by my customers. So whatever I'm innovating is actually not what my customer wants. Yeah, can you relate to this? How many of you can relate to this? Let's do a quick show of hands. Do you feel innovation in the same way? And any of those? Okay, great. So I'll try and solve some of the myths over here, some of the beliefs over here through this presentation. And I would invite you to take a new lens from this point forward to see how the innovation actually works when it comes to design. But first, let me quickly tell you about my story. I'm a second generation architect and third generation entrepreneur. And somewhere along my career, something happened with a project which I took very close to heart. And I realized that I will not be able to take this any longer. So that's when my journey towards innovation started, because I didn't want to say later on that, well, if I had known. And so that brings me to researching the innovations and the innovation sciences, which I had also put together in a book and launched last year. Shared with a lot of entrepreneurs, trying to do cross-industry panels. These were some of the reviews that we got in the book. And I also went into teaching innovations to entrepreneurs, putting up lectures and taking juries of startup ventures, when I realized even more things that I want to share with you today. So basic question, what is innovation? So when we speak about innovation, do you think about iPhone? Do you think about Apple? Do you think about Google? Do you think about SpaceX? So does that mean that innovation is only for the techies? Well, one thing I can surely say is that if you were to Google the definition of innovation, this is what you will find. Make changes in something established, especially by introducing new methods, ideas, or products. And the key element over here is that we're talking about ideas over here. And if you see our conventional process of architecture or interior design, you start with an idea, or you have a problem to solve. You got a site, you got a bombshell, you got a set of requirements, and there's a problem out there. So you start brainstorming the ideas, you analyze the possibilities, and you develop a design. Yeah, typically that's what the process is. So this is actually categorized as a broad innovation. So there are 3 kinds of innovation that I'm going to present. The first one is the broad innovation, and as you can see, this beautiful facade over here, or beautiful interior design in your case, is actually a product in the end, and we start with an idea that leads all the way to development of the product. Now, this is the statistics I found from the CB Insight, and it starts elaborating on why startup fails. And to my surprise, the topmost reason, which is about the 42% of the startups, they were failing because of no market need. 42% startups are failing because of no market need. Now what does that tell us? Why would a startup venture into an area where there is no market need? The problem is the randomness of the ideas. This approach is primarily called as an idea-first approach. And when we look at the ideas, we are sort of doing all kinds of mental maps around it, and then we take one idea and we take it forward. Sometimes they work, but sometimes they don't. And that's what the previous model was showing, that 42% startups were failing because those ideas didn't work. And so, what is the fundamental issue with the definition of innovation? And can something be done about this? So what we found out was that innovation is primarily not about ideas as much as consistent stream of initiatives inspired by insights. And the key word over here is the insights. Because if you look at ideas by nature, there is no dearth of ideas. Right now we are sitting, and if you have a tissue paper, we will start sketching the ideas. But there is dearth of good ideas. So invest in insights and let idea be the tool for that. And pick up those insights and take forward with the innovations. So designers found a beautiful way to handle this by focusing on the process. So there was an era in our in the entire education fraternity where we started emphasizing on the processes, and these processes are readily available to us. It's generative algorithm, parametric design, design thinking, ego, and the green architecture theory. And the hope was that if we capture the process and if we take it forward, the process will lead back into the product design. So the process will actually eliminate the randomity of the product, and then we can further hone the product and then deliver the innovation. And that worked pretty well, in most of the cases. But then we hit another speed bump. By nature, processes are like frameworks. So if you have, take an example of an elephant. So if you have two elephants, they will grow into two different kinds of elephant, but in the end they will still be the elephant, because your base gene is the same. And the process is just like that. If you, once you have the process, you will end up generating the same style which represents the same era and a similar typology all the time. The elephant is not going to never grow into a gorilla. For that you have to pick up a gorilla genes. And so the processes became the single most factor of homogeneity. The work starts looking the same. If you open the folio, you can tell, okay, this is the homogeneity of the process of an interior designer, because they will start looking the same. And so that's where the processes hit the roadblock. Another problem was the problem of the changing values. I believe most of you from Bangalore, and Bangalore, just like any other city, is also suffering from the heat island effect. I'm from Delhi, and this picture is typically what we face in the winters, the smog that surrounds. And we wonder, what can we do as urban planners or urban architecture to change that? Another problem is from the picture on the right hand side, which is about purely how the workstations are placed. There were times when we were talking about these half-box cabin systems, and then they took it away. Now we're talking about only open space systems, where there is acoustics is the biggest problem that we're facing in the workspace environment. And of course now is the COVID, which is a new value change that has been brought by the pandemic. So the big question is that what problems are we solving? And beyond architecture and conventional building limitations, what are those that can be done about it? So when we say think out of the box, how do we actually think? How do we actually innovate in a sustainable manner that is not going to fall flat back with the same values? So there is a famous line by Steve Jobs that I would like to present over here, is that you can only connect the dots looking backwards. Nobody could, what events could have predicted that there would be a pandemic? What events could have been predicted that there would be a 2008 economic meltdown? And so our past informs and guides us, but it cannot always give us a surety of what's going to come forward. And that is what brings to my third argument, which is in the innovation category called the model innovation. So if we follow the model innovations, chances are pretty bright that the models are going to lead right into the right space. So I'm just going to quickly show some architectural case studies about how the model works, and we're going to discuss one of the models in great detail. And I'm pretty confident that this model can also be used in the interior designer. So we would like to take that kind of a background meaning to it. So design thinking, jobs to be done. Design thinking, jobs to be done, Bermuda Triangle, theory of non-consumption, front-end modularity. These are some of the models I've listed that we have been using in our firm. And what I am asking all of you, and my argument is that instead of starting the process, let's take a step back, or in this case a step forward, start with the model, align the process accordingly, and then develop the product. And what we're going to have is a beautiful product that sustains over a longer time. Let's look at the jobs to be done theory, what it really is all about. So how many of you have realized that the client is the biggest driver of the project? Show of hands. How many of you believe that the client is the biggest driver of any project? Okay. How many of you believe that it's not the client, it's the user who is driving the project? You've got to think about the user, whether it's the people, whether it's the janitor, whether it's anybody else who is using the property. They are the ones who are actually the driver of the project. Okay. So jobs to be done theory suggests that it's the job that drives the project. So what does that mean? So let's take an example of iPhone if I can. Everybody is carrying a phone, yeah? Android or iPhone. Now let's dial up our timeline 10 years back when we used to have those old Nokia phones. They were just meant for talking. So if the signal goes out, if there is no network in any zone, how would you have used the phone? You couldn't have used the phone because the user phone does not have any other functionality. So we were having the phones primarily to talk to people, to make calls. And if the network goes away, the phone goes out of purpose. And now with the most modern phones, we are using it as an internet communicator as well. We are using for all kind of notes taking. And so the job of the phone has increased a lot more than just about one-to-one communication. So if you look at the jobs to be done theory, the phone settles in the main jobs to be done, which is the communication. But there's a strong weighted jobs to be done as well, which is the other activities that we do using apps. Now how does it apply on architecture? This example I'm going to show is for the world's largest meditation center located in Hyderabad called the World Heartfulness Center. It was inaugurated just before the COVID by the President of India, and it carries around 1 lakh people and it's in its full glory. So we found a problem with we came up with the problem when this project was brought to us, that the brief initially said that they wanted to have a 50,000 people sitting in arena, which by any modern statistics, if I were to do the math, the sheer shed of that 50,000 people would be as big as Delhi Airport and as wide as Heathrow Terminal. So massively big structure for 50,000 people. And the most conventional method to go about was having a single volume. The problems that we faced was that being an ashram, being a spiritual space, they did not have money for AC. And imagine us right now, only 100 people are odd for us. If the AC goes off, how much time do we think that we can keep breathing? It will just get suffocated. So what 50,000 people within this small shed, no, it's a large shed, but 50,000 people breathing in, breathing out. And then of course the movement of 50,000 people inside, in and out of the space. We're talking about a lot more complexity than just feeding people. So using jobs to be done theory, I started mapping the jobs that the meditation center is supposed to do for the client. And what we realized was that though the client or the user of the client were only having one single agenda in their mind, which is about the mass meditation, it only covered 2 of these jobs that we uncovered in this list of 10. There were actually 15 jobs, I've only stuck to 10. Which means that had I gone for this typology, then later on the project would have only served those 2 jobs and the 8 jobs would have not served. Imagine a phone, if I were to take this example again, imagine your iPhone without any apps, without any internet. That's the state that the building would have caused to the client. And so it became very clear that a single shed is not the answer for the client. It's actually the fragmented volume that will deliver all the jobs, and even better, fragmented volume with a release space in between. That will really check mark all the jobs that the architecture was supposed to do for the client. And so in the series of development, these are the construction images that happened. Just to give a sense of scale, this single volume right in the center is bigger than Bangalore Airport. That's still how large it is. And still we had to break it to multiple outlets to fulfill the job completely. So this is in its final glory of how people are sitting inside and meditating. As of today, it can house 1 lakh people. It's the single largest volume sitting gathering area in the world. And so far we have not encountered any issues with regards to the movement of the people or managing the microclimate. So this is one way how we look at jobs to be done and apply it into architecture. Now how can we do that with the interior design? So say you have a workstation or say you have an office space requirement. Have we actually gone down beyond the conventional brief and looked at into the client's value systems and what his business model is requiring before we start designing? So when we talk about client centricity, there are 2 ways about it. We can just be having to deliver a very good service and a very fast service to the client, or we can go deep down into the client's subconscious, understand his vision and the values before we deliver the design of the first cut. That is what we call as an outcome-driven design. So we understand what are the real outcomes that the client is trying to achieve by understanding its value system and deliver that piece of architecture or interior design in this case to begin with. So how much time do we have? Okay, so I'd like to cover 2 more case studies because I think this is very relevant for the interior design. with regards to the values. Interior design, if let's say you're going to have a retail store chain over there, so retail actually speaks about, it is supposed to be a showcase for the client. Speaking the brand values, speaking the nature of the product. And so if the architecture or the display is not showing the brand value, then the fulfillment of the client's purpose is not there. Now here we have a chart that we call as a Bermuda's triangle. You have the organization's value. This organization, you're talking about your client. And that your client has customers, so they have their own values. So if the organization, or in this case, your showcase property, which is the showroom, is depicting the values that resonate with the customer's client, then what is going to generate is a sustainability of the client's architecture. You're going to have, the client is going to attract multiple footfalls if the value system matches up these two ecosystems. Even better, if the client's competitors' values are different and client ecosystem is able to match with the customer's ecosystem, what you will end up generating is the uniqueness through your interior design for the client. And if these two aspects are there, the uniqueness and the sustainability, which is a core value proposition of your design exercise, then the client will incur into profitability. Make sense? So let's see how. So this is a case study for a hospital that we did in Jaipur, where there was an existing building, and like the competition prevailed in the city. My clients could not cope up with that at that moment, and because of the customer competition's values, the customer values influence, and somehow the organization values, they got annihilated, and they started taking a hit in the business values. They started taking a hit on the business plan. So we understood that where the problem was coming from, using the Bermuda's triangle and applying jobs to be done theory and understanding the customer mapping. This is what we delivered in the end. A complete change in the language of the institution, from the front end all the way into the ICUs, changing the values of how we deliver. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there was no change in the medical treatment. The core values of the medical phenomena remains the same. It's just the user values that were asked at that moment and beyond, the future user values. We captured all that in the infrastructure and the interior design and the branding exercises that we did with the branding consultant. And so those were the ICUs, these were the rooms. How we changed the perception of the hospital into a more user-centric hospital, with more user-centric medical spaces. Rooms started looking like hotels instead of mundane hospital rooms. And so not only did this client bounce back, but it also ended up attracting the biggest venture capitalist company funding. And now it is one of the strongest chain in the entire Rajasthan. So this is what the power of architecture is that can happen with the client, and how you can change the life of your client in some way if you follow the model-based innovations. Another example I would like to take is actually more inclined towards architecture, but I'll just quickly blissfully go through this. It's about the sustainability. Now, common sustainability beliefs that revolve around these norms that we end up understanding is primarily to do with efficiency. So we talk about energy efficiency, we talk about water efficiency, we talk about HVAC efficiency, we talk about high performance glass and materials and all those things, which are primarily to do with how the building is consuming the electricity and the energy and how much we can optimize it. The other way the sustainability acts upon is through the program efficiency, which means that can you curtail the program so as to build less and therefore saves the cost. And of course, urban designers, anybody over here will understand the building in the urban voids, which means the infrastructure is already laid and you build a building into one of those voids, repurpose them. That is probably interior design's domain, where there's an existing abandoned building and you repurpose that saves a sustainability program. But what we are interested is to understand how can you fuse the two programs. So if there is a theory of consumption, if you look at from a theory of consumption, if one kind of program is being used only 20% and the other kind of program is used for 50%, building two buildings separately for that doesn't make sense. And this is what we did for Dayton Rajasthan Hall, which is there in Delhi, currently under construction. As you can see, it somewhat represents a sports stadium. The story for that is that the client actually wanted a multi-purpose hall, and for 3,500 seater capacity. A conventional multi-purpose hall is actually a flat ground. It's supposed to be developed as a flat ground. But because of the capacity, the constraint that we were facing was that this last half of the area would not have any view to the stage because of the distance. So naturally, one would like to think that, okay, let's incline it, like an auditorium. But then the auditorium cannot be used for multi-purpose. It will just become like seating steps. So what is the solution? So the last section that is depicted, where you have a half inclined and half flat, gave us a solution, and by changing the plan shape, what we got was a very unique kind of a space where not only we had the sports integrated inside the hall, but it gave space for all kinds of educational, environmental gatherings, even that the client didn't knew at that time, to happen within this hall. So should there be a science symposium, you have the stage, you have the sitting. Should there be a floor-based activity like arts and science fair, you have the flat space, you have the audience there. And should you have a 3,500 seater gathering, maybe 2 or 3 times in a year, add a few more chairs in front of it, and that will give you the complete capacity. So suddenly, this building became a fusion of 2 different buildings, and it saved a lot of carbon footprint, a lot of cost for the client. And we're not just talking about the capex cost, we're also talking about the operational cost and the maintenance cost that got saved. This is a photograph of the construction. As you can see clearly how the stage looks in front of it when you're sitting. So by this method, by adopting this model, we not only got program efficiency, but as I said, less capital cost and less running cost. So my argument towards our esteemed guests and all the members of the fellow fraternity is that instead of focusing just on the process and the plot, what we have found through our examples is it makes sense if you look at the model and then drive the model back into the process and then further into the product development. What it will bring about is a very different dimension of the client centricity or the user centricity, and what you will end up having is an ecosystem that works a lot more than what otherwise we have been working. So there's 2 more quotes I would like to share before the end of this presentation. One is that I already shown that how can you can only connect the dots when you're looking backwards. So this is a way to look forward, using the model-based innovation. The other quote is somewhat interpretation-wise confusing. That what can we make out of it? If I had to ask people what they wanted, they would have asked me for faster horses, not cars. Henry Ford, before he invented the Model T. Now what does that tell us? Innovation is a lot about invisible. If you look at that image, the light bulb that is being drawn out of the silhouette of the hand, most of the people cannot see it until it's shown to them. So that model-based innovation helps you to understand the invisible side. And so the latent needs of the users, which is basically needs that yet to be uncovered, they get surfaced through model innovation and then captured into the building ecosystem, rather than actually building ecosystem coming into place and then people realizing that, okay, this is what my need was also there, which is not being catered. So, yeah, as a last slide, I would like to offer anybody who is more interested in understanding about this methodology about innovation with my book. All they have to do is they have to go to the link www.utsavgupta.com/book, fill in the details. I will ship them the book free of cost.